just on the experience of a Melburnian at the moment. What's it like out there under lockdown again?
Well, most people are frankly enraged because they see the situation as being imminently avoidable. Last night, like a lot of people, I went out to, a restaurant for the final hurrah that you're going to have potentially for 6 weeks. Go to the gym for the last time before we all go back into lockdown. So I think it's a pretty sombre and as best sanguine mood in the context of what we know is going to be a very long haul.
The Premier, Daniel Andrews, is taking some pretty serious incoming at the moment, Tim, and deservedly so, say a lot of people. What's your opinion of how he's handled it and the mishaps along the way?
Well, essentially, he's broken the contract between the people of Victoria and the state government. The contract between the people of Victoria and the state government is that we would, it was up to every Victorian to take responsibility to make sure we didn't see a spread of the virus, only to find out the group who was supposed to be responsible for enforcing the law and making sure there wasn't a spread was ultimately the key, the key participant in making sure it spread. And mostly because you have a state government who is more interested in making sure that companies that hire their union mates took precedence over the public health of Victorians. So frankly, people are pissed off.
So is that what it's come down to here? Because there hasn't actually been an explanation, Tim, on why the private security firms were used to kind of man the hotel quarantine system, because now it's before a judicial inquiry, which the cynics would argue is an excuse for the Premier not to address it and talk about that. But is that why it is a backhander to the unions? Is that what you reckon?
Well, the state government is all power and no accountability. Dan Andrews is all power and no accountability. And this is why people are so angry, because they have done the right thing while the state government has not. And it seems pretty clear that there was a deliberate attempt to use private security firms, and the only people who seemed to benefit were those people who were close and associated with the state government. That's why people are so angry, because it does seem pretty clear to everybody that there's a direct link between the interests or the internal interests of the Labor Party and the state government at the expense of the public health of Victoria.
Well, now there's a new report on the front page of The Age this morning, Tim, that there were plans in place to buy hundreds of defibrillators from overseas, but that never proceeded because Victoria began to flatten the curve. So, I mean, if that's true, what do you make of it?
Well, I mean, I don't know about those procurement policies, but we've got to make sure in the first wave of this virus in the first lockdown was all about building up our capacity to be able to manage circumstances if we did get an outbreak. So we should have taken appropriate and protective measures. And if that story is true, then we've wasted the opportunity we need to put our state in the best position to address this virus.
So, I mean, there's a lot of business owners, and Daniel Andrews is a while off the next election. So, I mean, he's probably safe for now in his position. But, a lot of business owners were saying he should resign. And he was asked about that in his press conference yesterday. He said he's not going anywhere. But do you think he should resign?
I don't think it will solve the problem, because the problem isn't just the Premier. The problem is the very approach the Labor Party has taken to running state government in Victoria, where they manage out their internal machinations and their internal interests for the Labor Party through the advancement of and the practices of the state government. So simply doing that won't solve the problem. I want the problem solved, and that's only going to be through the removal of a Labor government.
OK, just on to another matter. It looks like the government today is preparing to announce safe haven visas, Tim, for Hong Kong residents. What are you hearing about that?
Well, these decisions, I understand, were considered yesterday in Cabinet, and obviously I wasn't privy to those conversations, but the Prime Minister has given pretty clear indications that Australia is very open to measures to assist people of Hong Kong who might have been dissidents or might be having a reason, justification to leave, and that Australia would be participant with other countries in supporting those people. And of course, his statements already are very encouraging, and I really look forward to any announcement that may be made.
It's the right thing to do, isn't it?
Well, I think it's the right thing to do, and I think it would be a very positive step for our country, because in the end, Liberal Democrats from Hong Kong will be safer and freer in our country, and we have a lot more in line with their interests than they do under the Chinese Communist Party.
Can you, for those who don't know, Tim, a safe haven visa, what is that? What does it allow? Is there a time frame attached to that, or is it permanent?
There's been no announcement, so I'm not going to speculate on the terms and the conditions. But obviously, we have our existing humanitarian program, which provides a pathway for people to be able, if they face fear of persecution, to come to Australia and be free of persecution. And Liberal Democrats in Hong Kong, to me, seem like a pretty right group of people who would face serious concerns of persecution under the Chinese Communist Party.
It would have to be capped, right? Because, you can't help everyone, unfortunately, but, there would have to be a certain amount of people applied to that, right?
Well, the normal way these things work is that there are tests about whether you meet those tests, and that's the basis in which you can enter. Now, this is under the humanitarian program. I don't want to speculate on any potential announcement, but there are ways to make sure that the people who are getting assistance need the assistance, and it doesn't become a backdoor pathway for others to come into the country.
Okay.
Border security is critical.
Just finally, JobKeeper, there's probably, there is obvious extensions to that program now, given what's happened in Victoria, what's happened in Melbourne. What sort of changes would you like to see?
I'm being cautious. I'm waiting to see what the economic statement says towards the end of the month. But everybody knows that the Prime Minister introduced these measures with the Treasurer on a temporary basis to deal with the challenges of coronavirus, and we need to adapt and respond based on the unfolding conditions. Now, we've obviously got new unfolding conditions in Victoria. It may not just be contained to Victoria over time, but we have to make sure that what we're doing is sustainable so that we can continue to support the economy and achieve growth, which is why the rumours of the encouragement to see potential tax cuts into the future is something that I think would probably be more sustainable, because it actually promotes job creation and economic growth.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you that. I mean, obviously, that'd be something that you would support. How much would those tax cuts help if they're brought forward by X amount of years?
Well, of course, I'll support tax cuts because we voted for them in Parliament. All that's being discussed is whether they're brought forward. But obviously, if that were to occur, and there's only press reports about that, there would obviously be significant benefit to those people who are working, who can then go on and generate other economic activity. I've seen tables from some households between $800 and $2,500 per year.